Okay, next up is going to be Jake's Magical Market, written by J.R. Matthews. It is 773 pages, $4.99. It's available on Kindle Limited. Here's the author's description. Meddling gods, a magic card system, an apocalypse no one could have predicted. Jake is working at the neighborhood market under his apartment when the world ends. He expects nuclear war, computer virus, or even climate change burning everyone to a crisp to bring about the downfall of civilization. But cruel and arbitrary gods from another world? Who could have guessed? When these cruel gods shuffled Earth like a deck of cards, nothing was in the same place anymore. Monsters, dungeons, and magic items appear scattered across the globe, and suddenly, everyone has access to a new, strange magical card system that gives them magical powers. Jake, wasting his day slacking off in the cooler as he usually did, found himself alone in a completely new and very dangerous world. Can he learn to survive? Can he collect enough cards and create a good enough deck to fight back against the monsters that have overtaken his former home? And why are these strange people looking a lot like elves, knocking on the door of the market he's hiding in, asking to buy some of his goods? The gods may have stacked the deck against him, but Jake just might have a few cards up his sleeve that will help him to survive. Okay, the novel description there actually only really applies to like the first quarter, 40% of the novel. Then there's a shift in the trend, which I'll talk about. This is a serial story. It's online still. There are several types of progression systems. The setting is an RPG apocalypse where the earth is broken up and mixed with dungeons and monsters that roam freely. And because this is more of a slice of life story and it's serialized, it feels that way. It's a collection that almost feels like two larger arcs of what's happening in the story universe. The first 40% is an RPG apocalypse story, very straightforward. Dungeon diving, card collecting, leveling, minor merchant stuff, which is the title of the story, the magical market bit, some relationship building to build up the main character and how he finds himself, and a slower introduction to the new rules of the world. After that 40% mark, though, the story seriously shifts as the main character is pushed into an entirely new environment. The entire marketplace thing disappears. He's literally gone from Earth. Minor spoiler there. And with all the benefit of the work he put into developing the card system and his power system through those cards. And it's here the main character develops and grows in power without using using the more fantasy cultivation magic system. It definitely feels like a forced change in the story where the author, like, I felt like the author was like, I'm getting tired of this card thing. I've kind of pushed it as far as it's going to go. Let's try something new. And he does. And he doesn't entirely disregard the card RPG progression system that he established before, but it definitely takes a backseat to this new cultivation fantasy magic system that the main character does. And through the rest of the story, there's still lots of action adventure. There's still really good world building, but the RPG progression system that I had invested in as a reader almost completely disappears. I'd say probably about 80% of it disappears from the story compared to like the first half of the novel. And it does take a back seat for the majority of the story. And it ends up being more like a currency system, and a point of power division among like the classes in this like multi-world universe that uses these cards as a form of like not just energy, but also like regular day-to-day job working abilities. And that was just something that took away from the story for me a little bit. It was still a very entertaining story, and I had a good time with it, but it brought it down a little bit because I realized, after that 40% mark, the card system that I had invested in, the RPG progression system through the cards that I really liked, was kind of gone. It kind of disappears for something else. And for other people, the other thing, which is the fantasy cultivation progression aspect of the story, might be better for them, and that's perfectly okay. But for me, it dragged it down because I like RPG. On the game mechanic side of things, I really enjoyed the first side of the story, which I mentioned. The card system is very robust. There's a huge variety of cards based on people's fantasies, races, and what kind of monsters you kill. Killing monsters or clearing dungeons gets you special magic cards with spells, martial abilities, passive bonuses, and more. The cards can be upgraded and leveled by sacrificing other cards or combining with their own type to evolve them. This allowed for some really good creativity as the cards could be swapped out for different synergies and strategies and builds. Later in the story, again about 40% in, other systems emerge that take ambient magical energy to cast spell-like abilities and power carved runes that have a variety of aspects. The main character still grows in power, but it's not put in RPG terms like leveling anymore. And though the card system still exists, it isn't really used by the main character except to gain access to new magical domains. Much later, the other power sources emerge, even different ones, but those are the two mainly developed in the story. Overall, there's a lot of good things here. A lot of people really like this story. I think it has 700 positive reviews in only like a month or so, and that means a lot of people really love this. It has good action adventure. There's good world building, good character and relationship development. There are definitely places where I felt the story was pushed to kind of shift things in the story, which is perfectly acceptable. Remember, it's a serialized story, so this has been written over a long period of time with different arcs in mind. So, and to keep the serial going, sometimes you do have to do these radical shifts in environment and in location so that the story can still continue on and the main character still is challenged. So I absolutely understand that. I was disappointed personally with the loss of the card system for the most part. I'd really come to enjoy it. But again, it doesn't disappear entirely. And it's still good overall, which for me shifts it more to more game lift than RPG because most of the story does kind of shift focus away from the card RPG system. But still, had a good time with it. Gets a score of 7.6 out of 10 for me. As Jake's Magical Market with a score of 7.6 out of 10, which is above average good.